Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Cronin to Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com.
Well, Rabbi, we have a first-time senator coming to our studio here, Senator Mike Ranzenhofer from the Buffalo area,
yes,
Amherst.
Buffalo, yes.
And welcome to the Jewish View. I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to it.
Now, you're from Amherst?
Amherst, New York.
That's
yes.
Where you're now. That's
right.
And you represent an area that goes like close to Rochester to Buffalo?
Right. The my stretch of district is basically from the city of Buffalo into the city of Rochester. So it's a very diverse district, long, narrow district, but 3 different counties, and as I said, very, very diverse population.
And you have Batavia in your district.
Right, I have Batavia, going from west to east. I have 3 towns, Amherst, which is a town of about 125,000.
Known for University of Buffalo.
It's the heart, right? University of Buffalo is about 3 miles from my house.
Right.
I spent a lot of time there, and 2 other smaller towns. Then I have Genesee County with, as you just mentioned, Batavia, and that has about 60,000. And then I go into the Rochester area and have about 70,000 residents in 2 towns there and 40,000 in the inner city of Rochester. So I have very, very urban area, very, very rural area, and very, very suburban area, which is it's a microcosm of the state,
right.
But it's very unusual for one district to actually have 3 very distinct type of territories.
I used to work with WBTA in Batavia.
Oh, okay.
And I used to be their Albany guy.
Okay.
So when I went to visit, I'm turning on the station and I'm hearing the traffic report. And I'm saying, it's a one-light city. They have 1 traffic light here. What do you have a traffic report for?
Well, they have about 20 traffic lights, but,
but
yeah.
So
compared to New York City.
But
but
the station owner, Dan Fisher, he said to me, he says, well, because people live in Batavia and they either work in Buffalo or Rochester,
right.
So we give them the throughway, the traffic
right.
right in between Rochester and Buffalo. And I just never thought of Batavia as being a bedroom community for Buffalo and Rochester.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that I know that, a lot of them, work and live in Batavia in the Genesee County, but there are a lot of folks that commute back and forth to the Rochester area and to the Buffalo area.
And they have traffic reports.
And they have traffic reports because you want to get there on time. So
probably one of the biggest issues, obviously, tell me if I'm wrong, is probably the economy. That's what they always say, even in Albany, the upstate economy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they say is so depressed. You see the Buffalo, the numbers have gone down in population, the economy. I drive through there. I really don't know that much about that area, but are you working on certain things to help that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the entire upstate region, from maybe not Albany so much because there has been a little population growth, but if you just look at New York State nationally and the power that we've lost in Washington. I think we went from a high of 49 representatives at one point in the nation's capital, and now we have like 27. So we're
really
like
that low? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we're about a little bit, not quite 50%, but one of the things that happened. If you want to go back historically, if you remember the 1900 Pan American Games and the exhibition, there were about 600,000 people in the city of Buffalo. And now it's about 250. So the surrounding suburban areas are doing well, like Amherst with the university. That's a growing area. But all of upstate, over the last 60 years has been losing population. The most recent loss is probably due, to the loss of steel manufacturing, rubber manufacturing, auto. You had companies like Bethlehem Steel, Republic Steel that would employ 25 to 30,000 people.
Really that many?
Yeah, and now they have hundreds. So, and then
it's like GE and Schenectady, the same type of thing.
Right, and Syracuse and Kodak in Rochester and Syracuse.
Carrier Corporation.
Carrier Corporation, Westinghouse. All of them. The manufacturing is down, or in other areas of the world or the country, and as a result of that, population has really dropped significantly.
Yeah, the other thing is that in the Senate, you have well, anyway, getting back about population, New York State just didn't lose population. They're not growing as fast as the other states. And,
right.
And just a few years ago, maybe it was last year, we fell behind Florida. So now we're the fourth most populous state,
right.
behind California, Texas, Florida, and then New York.
Right, and most of the population growth is in the New York City area. The other areas are either losing population or holding their own, but it really is where you stand in relation to other states. So even with our net positive gain of people, we still lost 2 representatives, which represents about, each congressional district is about 750,000 people. I think 770,000. So that's 1 plus 1.5 million people that were lost at least in the last 10 years in order for us to drop 2.
What do you think of did you ever think of a run for Congress? Did you ever?
I never did. I actually, when I first ran for the Senate, there was...
How long ago was that?
7 years ago. It was 2008 when I first ran. And at the time that I ran, the senator was retiring.
Mary Lou Rath?
Mary Lou Rath, my predecessor. And there was also an opening in Congress. So I thought about both of those opportunities. I thought about the congressional seat for about 20 seconds, and it really wasn't the right fit for me, for many reasons. One of them being that I had worked in county government, and the reason I wanted to run for the state senate is so much of what happens in the county is governed by what happens in the state. And I really thought that my background and experience in county government would make me a good candidate and an appropriate candidate to serve in the state senate, where there really is no linkage to what happens in Washington. What happens in Washington, a lot of national security issues, a lot of federal issues, immigration. It really wasn't my area of expertise. So
was it, when you say there was an opening in Congress, was it Kathy Hochul or was it Chris Collins? Or
I was neither.
Which seat was
it? It was Tom Reynolds held the seat at the time and had decided not to seek re-election, and a gentleman by the name of Chris Lee ran, and he won. So,
but in the Senate here in New York and Albany now, it's gone the Republican, then Democrat, the Republican. I mean, have you seen that both? I mean, you've been here for a good few years.
Yeah,
so you've been in that.
Right. It was very unusual because, before I was here, it had been Republican for about 70 years. With the exception of maybe 2 years. So it always been Republican. And I had served as a minority representative in the county legislature, so I was enticed to run for the Senate to become a member of the majority.
Yeah, that's good.
And that was the only open seat other than Senator Bruno's seat. He was retiring, but the person that was running for his seat, it was really not a contested seat. I mean, it was a very easy race for that individual. So my seat was the only open seat, so it was really the focus of the state was really focused on my seat, and they said, well, yeah, if you win, you're going to be in the majority. So I win, and then there are 2 senators from Long Island who got knocked off, so I went to serve in the minority. But so my first 2 years were in the minority, but the last 4 years and then these 2 years, we've been in the majority, and it's been a substantial difference.
You chair the Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions Committee.
Yes. Right.
What's going on with that committee that you should tell us about that's exciting and interesting?
Oh. Well, first of all, you mentioned what's exciting and interesting. There are a lot of things that are exciting and interesting to me, but it probably is one of the driest committees, and no one wants to serve on that committee with the enthusiasm that I do. So I'm the chair of that. I love serving on that committee because you really touch a lot of people's lives, because you'd be surprised, but when you sit down and think about it, we govern what happens in the not-for-profit community, and for instance, that's over, I believe, 1 million workers in the state, and billions and billions of dollars, whether it be healthcare, hospitals. So the not-for-profit really covers a very wide brand, and we actually have had some tremendous legislative achievements. A couple of years ago, we enacted. Introduced and then actually got passed and signed into law the Not-for-Profit Revitalization Act, which, again, it doesn't sound very exciting or sexy, but it really revised the not-for-profit laws for the first time in 40 years. And when I was introducing this bill, you know, other people had tried in the past and it never got anywhere because you were waiting for, you know, bar associations and law revisions to comment, and lawyers just take forever to do things. So you know, we decided to have some public hearings around the state. People saw that we were serious. We had one in Albany right here. We had one in New York City. We had one in Rochester. And we got the law passed and signed into law. And that was probably, you know, one of the greatest achievements, you know, for a, you know, not very exciting topic, but one which really impacts people's lives. And the interesting thing is one of the things I saw this year is there was something that was put out in the local paper, City and State. It's a local paper that folks take a look at. And the question was, which is the bill that gets looked at the most? So the number one bill that got looked at the most was the gay marriage bill, and that had about maybe 28,000 hits. People were interested in that legislation. Then the second most looked at bill was the not-for-profit revitalization bill, which had, and I'm roughly estimating, I'm not sure if I remember exactly, but about 26,000, so right behind a very, very hot topic. The third most looked at bill had like 6,000 hits. So, you know, when you see something like that, I mean, people in the community at large were very, very interested in that legislation. So I take a great deal of pride in serving as the chair of that committee, and we've had a lot of
that's why I wanted
successes.
to touch on it, because I didn't want to just, I personally know that you could do a lot with it, but most people, like you're saying, think it's a dry committee, so I was kind of being a little dry in my humor in terms of what's new and exciting in this
people
committee.
are really not rushing to serve on that committee, you know, it's like kind of a, you know, a groan, but you know, when the people that are on the committee get into it and start rolling up their sleeves, I mean, they see that there's really a lot of good work.
Another committee that you're on is agriculture.
Yes.
And one of the measures that you were almost as famous for was the yogurt, making yogurt a state snack.
I thought you might remind me of that.
Yeah. So what happened? I mean, then Jon Stewart lampooned the whole thing, and.
Well, you know, I'll try to give you a short history.
Please.
What had happened is there's an elementary school in the heart of my district in Genesee County near Batavia called Byron Burgeon. It's a relatively small school district, and the kids in the 4th grade were studying state symbols from across the country, like New York state symbols and then state symbols of other states. And they were looking through this, and they saw that other states had a state snack. And like, we have a state flower, we have a state bird. We have, you know, we probably have about 70 or 80 state symbols, and they saw that other states had a state snack and we in New York did not. So, you know, with the encouragement of the teacher and the kids, you know, they said, well, you know, we should have a state snack, and they came up with the idea of yogurt, and it really fits into the theme of an agricultural community for 2 reasons. One is that in that community, there are 2 new yogurt manufacturers that have opened up shop in the last year or 2, employ, you know, about 300 people, and they're growing. And one of the products that you need to make yogurt is milk, and Genesee County and the counties around there are one of the largest milk producing, you know, very big in dairy. So they went on a campaign to try to get support, and they wrote to me, and they wrote to our assembly member, and they wrote to the governor and other senators. So I introduced the bill, and Senator Hawley and McGee from the Assembly also introduced the bill. And
the Assembly didn't want to take it up after this.
No, they didn't want to take it up after the big debate. So what happened is, you know, it worked its way through committee, and it was really a non-controversial type of bill. It was really a good example of, you know, because we talk in schools a lot about how a bill becomes a law. And, you know, so these kids were actually living how a bill becomes a law. So they wrote us and they lobbied us, and we went to the school and got a lot of support. And I got my colleagues to support it. So we got it through the Agricultural Committee. We got it onto the floor of the Senate. It was scheduled on the agenda for that particular day. And there was a political dispute between Republicans and Democrats where normally, you know, the bill would be talked about for maybe a couple of minutes and then it would pass unanimously. But the other side was upset. Democrats were upset.
Senator Kruger in particular.
Senator Kruger and Senator Gustavo Rivera. And you know, they were asking, you know, what is a snack, and they were asking, what did you consider potato chips, and all really, when you look at it, really ridiculous type of questions to try to make a point, not to do with this bill. So we debated, you know, when you look back, you know, 45 minutes went by, and we were debating this bill, which would normally take a minute, and I guess, you know, people thought, you know, after listening to the debate, you know, the questions, which I thought were silly and ridiculous, and my answers, which were, you know, serious answers. You know, it caught David Letterman,
Jon Stewart's
Jon
Daily
Stewart, and then that's when it went viral, and they took clips out of it.
Yes.
And his ad-libbing
Yes.
on making comments, it was probably one of the most hysterical skits that you'll ever see in your entire life.
Well, one of the things that it says is it raises the issue of lactose intolerance.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that was a Liz Kruger question. You know, she had concerns about that, and one of the things that...
And you said lactose-free soy yogurt.
Yes, I actually, I like to think that I was pretty knowledgeable and educated on the subject.
Funny.
And funny, maybe. I'm not
could be
gonna.
funny.
I'll leave that judgment to others. But knowledgeable, I'll
Okay.
take credit for. But it's interesting because my wife, at the time, was a vegan. You know, she did not have dairy and meat and stuff like that. So I was very familiar with the fact that they have soy yogurt. So I was able to answer her. I remember Jon Stewart made some comment, like, how does he know about this? And he called me the Ken Jennings of, you know, of yogurt. Ken Jennings is probably the greatest winner on Jeopardy, like one of the smartest guys in the world. So I took that as a compliment.
Yeah.
That, you know, it was a compliment. But, you know, he was making fun of my name and fun of the whole, you know, they did a whole parody on it. It was really, you know, I was kind of, you know, I was on the receiving end of it, but it was really very, very funny.
He said, basically said, I'm telling you, this may be the best 40 minutes any legislative chamber anywhere in the country has ever spent. So, you know, with all the other, I mean, we just went, you know, when you see these long debates that go on for hours and hours, and then all of a sudden you see something that you could just roll your eyes and think, oh, is this the best thing they could spend their time on?
Yeah.
You know, the Democrats come up with certain things just to dig you a little every once in a while.
Yeah, that was their point. I mean, it was not a serious debate on their point. I mean, you know.
But anyway, you're on the Agriculture Committee. And
I am on the Agriculture Committee.
You served your constituents, and they were all happy.
And we had the happiest group of fourth graders in the world, because that's one thing they can never take away from them when they are my age and when they're parents. I mean, they can tell their own kids that, you know, this is what they did in the fourth grade in their little class project. You know, they made it through. It made it into a bill and became a law. So.
I wanted to ask you about your. Let's see, what other, well, just so everyone knows, I just wanted to share with everyone your other education committee. You're on the finance committee, judiciary committee, racing, gaming, and wagering, which takes under casinos. And
You chair any besides that?
No,
every member chairs one committee.
That's all.
Right.
You're one of the. Well, Simcha Feld is an anomaly of whether he's Democrat, Republican, whatever.
Yeah.
But you're the only Jewish Republican.
I am.
Okay, right out in the Senate.
Right.
Steve Saland from the Hudson Valley used to be the two of you.
Well, and we had also, how quickly we forget.
Yes. What area?
Oh, Long Island. He just ran for Congress.
Yeah, Lee Zeldin.
Lee Zeldin.
Okay.
So we had a little minion.
That's right.
Not quite a minion. We had a little caucus of the three of us.
That's right.
Although I'm not sure if Steve and Lee overlap, but you know, Steve left about 4 years ago, and Lee just left this year. So yes, I'm the only Republican Jewish person.
And then you have Simcha Feld as a Democrat, but caucuses with the Republicans.
Right.
Do you commiserate with him, and maybe there's some of the religious stuff that rubs off on you?
I'd say, well, he's much more religious than me.
Because you're much more cultural.
Yeah, we have a common bond, obviously, and Simcha is one of the funniest guys around, and an excellent senator. You know, represents his district very well, very conscientious. And, you know, also very conscientious about his faith. And, you know, we're all very respectful of that. And
well, I see more kosher food around the Senate Republican lobby than I used to. So.
Right, exactly. So, no, I get along with Simcha very well. And as I said, you know, he's a source of inspiration for me. He's a very religious and very spiritual individual.
Well, I'm just glad that they didn't seat you like together where that's like the Jewish section. You know?
No, we're close to each other. But no, no, there is, you know, it's funny because because I mean, there really are no sections. Like there's no Long Island section or Upstate section. We all actually get along very well with each other. No matter where we are from, no matter what our faith is. So I think I fit in pretty well with Simca and everybody else.
I wanted to ask you. You're an attorney.
I am, yes.
And there's a big debate going on as to whether attorneys should disclose their clients.
Right.
Can you fill in the audience about what's going on and then how you feel about it and your personal views on it?
Sure. There's a movement afoot. There's many movements afoot. One is to, for instance, to bar people from working outside the legislature. So you should just be a full-time legislator. There's a movement afoot to distinguish between full-time and part-time legislators, where full-time legislators would be paid a different amount of money than part-time legislators. There's a movement afoot to have attorneys disclose their clients. And you really have to strike a balance between the public's right to know and the privacy expectation that a client has. I mean, if someone is coming to me for a real estate transaction or an adoption or a divorce or a criminal matter or an injury case or, no matter what the type of matter, I mean, it really has no bearing on state government. Right. There is disclosure right now that, we're banned from representing individuals or companies before government or state agencies or the state court of claims. So that obviously has to be disclosed, and you're not allowed to do it, so there really is nothing to disclose. But
and does that put your partner, Mr. Friedman, under the same rubric as you? Even
it's for
not an elected official.
Right. It's for law firms. So if you are a member of a law firm, and we have a small law firm, we have 3 lawyers, and we have a pretty robust practice. We have a lot of clients.
You have 8 offices, I think I read?
Well, we have, I believe, 6 offices.
6? Okay. Well, that's robust.
Yeah, I would say so. And, as I said, we have a good practice. But, for someone who's coming out to us for estate matters or divorces or whatever the case may be, I just don't see the relationship and, why, they have an expectation of privacy that if they come to me, their name is not going to appear somewhere in a disclosure statement that I'm representing, Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Goodman.
Because even if it's sealed, you know how that glue just comes off that seal, very at the right time,
Well, there's a question of
the paper pops out of the envelope on its own,
Yeah. Well, there's a question of whether or not. I mean, is that something that the public should know that you're coming to me. Because
in fact, I may not come to you if I know that there's a possibility that my name is going. So that would hurt your business.
It would hurt my business.
Why should you have to be hurt?
Well,
and it negatively impacted.
Well, and under the Constitution, I mean, this is a part-time position. It's not a full-time position. I mean,
I want to keep it that way.
I do. I mean, I subscribe to the philosophy. Right now in Congress, we have full-time congressmen, and we see how effective that's been. I mean, they don't get anything done. All they do is posture. And it's very politicized. I think there's a good balance right now between people that work in the Senate and also have private businesses, whether it be in the law. Now, law, there are more lawyers than there are, for instance, dentists, because it's just a natural attraction that someone who is a lawyer is going to become a lawmaker. But we have contractors and chiropractors and real estate individuals, and to say that someone should not have a foot in the community. And an understanding of what it's like to run a business, when you're going to be passing laws that affect business. I mean, I don't subscribe to that philosophy. I subscribe to the philosophy of a citizen legislator. And it's not that you have to go back and plant the crops. I mean, that's not the theory anymore. But I think it's healthy to work in the community, or even if you volunteer in the community. I think it's good to get out into the community and see how business works and see how community groups work. So that's why I don't subscribe to that philosophy.
And if there are ethics reforms for the state legislators, do you think they should be the same for the governor and the executive chamber?
Well, it should, not only for the legislature and the executive, but also for the Attorney General's office and the Comptroller's office and people that work in agencies. I mean, there should be, but it's different types of disclosure. Like, for instance, there are not a lot of private, part-time attorneys that would work in agencies or work in the executive chamber, because that's a full-time job. But there are other issues with respect to people that are appointed to commissions and people that sit on boards and people that are awarded contracts, whether it be for social services or highway paving. What is the connection between them and the governor, or them and the attorney general? Which actually people are more interested in than whether or not Mrs. Smith comes to me for a divorce. I mean, there's a lot more, there's a lot more interaction and potential for abuse than there is, by me not disclosing, who's coming in for a will, who's coming in for a real estate deal.
And that's what you do, a lot of estate and wills.
We do a lot of estate and wills. We do a lot of representation of individuals and small business. I mean, we don't represent large companies.
This is the time for your shameless plug.
Well, no, I'm not going to take advantage of that now. But, we have a very broad based clientele. We do a lot of different things.
All right. So you're on, like I mentioned earlier, you're on the Racing, Gaming, and Wagering Committee.
Right.
So with casinos, how did you come down on that? And Tyre is sort of east of your end of the district, eastern end of your district. It's further east.
Well, it's out of my district, so it's actually it's east of my district.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, exactly. I knew what you were talking about. So.
And I'm just wondering, still it'll have an impact on the eastern end of your district.
Right.
So how do you feel about gambling and casinos?
Yeah, well, my feeling was, and I've dealt with this issue, before, is, personally I'm opposed to it, okay? I don't really think it helps communities. I think it really hurts, especially poor people.
And you don't go up to Niagara Falls and
I've been there,
sneak away?
I've been there once or twice, and to see a show,
just to see,
and
but no roulette or anything.
No, never roulette. Okay. But my big gambling night would be to take out a $20 bill and do like the one-armed bandit for about a half an hour until I get bored.
That's about me.
That's and maybe I'll end up with $14. So I consider it my entertainment. Yeah, but I have a racetrack and a casino in my district in Batavia Downs, very important to me. Yeah. So I thought it was important to serve on that committee. But back to your point, I'm not in favor of it, but I am a big fan of initiative and referendum to give voters the choice of what they want. So that was actually put on the ballot, and the electorate decided whether or not there should be casino gaming in New York State, and the voters approved that. Right. So I believe in giving them a choice, even though my personal view is I don't like it, I'm not in favor of it. I thought it was important to give voters the right to decide.
And
that.
Going back to look at the southern tier to put one down there, I mean, is that fair? I mean, is that
well, it's not for me to decide whether it's fair. I mean, I don't think it's going to really help their community. I mean, I'm looking at the, in our area we have one there's a Native American one in Salamanca, there's one in Buffalo, and there's one in Niagara Falls.
Right.
I mean, they're beautiful facilities, but they have not helped the community. I
right.
mean, the community around it is not good. And then you look at other areas like Atlantic City, and there are a lot of people getting out of the business because it really is not good. So, the southern tier, would like one. I believe in, in communities being able to decide, their future. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's necessarily good for them, but it's not for me to decide. If they feel it's good for them, it's kind of like manifest destiny. If they feel that this is good for them and their destiny at the end of the day, then
it is what it is. Huh?
I would encourage the Gaming Association to, consider their request and take a look at it.
Okay, so we just in the last few minutes that we have, you were given the Guardian of Small Business Award and several other Business Advocate of the Year award and stuff. I mean, how much of so you're a prominent businessman. Everyone likes what your philosophy on business.
Well, I don't think I was given it for being a prominent businessman. I think I was given it for, being, in terms of my legislative voting record, supporting small business and, the issues that they have to deal with. And I think a lot of that is based on the fact that I am a small businessman and can identify with their problems. So we're talking about cutting energy taxes, or dealing with the minimum wage, or the regulatory climate. I mean, my voting record is favored by the small business community because I'm voting on bills that they favor and against bills that they don't like. So the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, you know, actually this is the second time I won the award.
Well, now you got to get the Business Council Award. And we're running out of time. So.
We're running out of time. Senator, it's very good. You're doing good work for the people of New York and upstate New York, and a pride to the Jewish people. And we thank you very much and wish you the best success with good health.
Well, thank you very much. It was
Success.
great to be
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you for inviting me.